to The Truth in This Art. I am your host, Rob Lee. Thank you for tuning into my conversations at the intersection of arts, culture, and community. And before we get into the introduction, a little housekeeping. One, thank you all for subscribing, reviewing, leaving comments. Continue to do so. Continue to help spread the word. Independent creators, we're out here, we're putting in work, interviews, and really for this particular podcast, helping to amplify the voices of folks that always don't get that opportunity. This is a joint effort. This is a community effort. So any support in terms of helping to get the word out there is always appreciated. And in terms of appreciation, I want to again thank the Robert W. Deutsch Foundation for helping to sponsor this season. Obviously, podcasts aren't free, so getting the support from the Robert W. Deutsch Foundation, helping us with production costs and things of that nature for the podcast is truly a blessing and really a big piece of support. So that's kind of that. So thank you. And without much further ado, let's go into the introduction. My next guest is an artist and educator originally from Virginia, Richmond to be exact, and he is currently based in Atlanta, Georgia. His work is in mixed media and printmaking, and it explores the intersection of culture, identity, and blackness. Please welcome Jamaal Barber. Welcome to the podcast.
All right. Hey, what's going on, man?
Appreciate you, man, for coming on.
For sure.
And again, I always have to say this, right? If folks go through any of these episodes, right, and they have the visual component now, I've been better about having a visual. Whenever there's another guest, whenever there's a guest on and they have glasses on, I must compliment the four-eyed nature. We're here, the spectacle, we're out here.
Yeah, man, we got to see, man. That's it's super important.
I'm just going to start doing a podcast with no glasses on. It's like, I don't know how to do it. Just me squinting for an hour.
Yeah.
So before we get into like the main crux of the conversation and do the podcast thing, I want to give you sort of the space. I did a very like sort of surface level, an amalgamation of stuff off of line and so on about sort of your background. But I find that often something is missed, often something is left out, or something that doesn't quite do the guest justice. So I want to give you the space to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your work.
Oh, man. This is always like a big, broad question. They're like, yo, introduce yourself. Like, tell them everything about you in the next minute and a half.
you got like 40 minutes. If you just want to say, look, this is me, shameless self-promotion. This is Jay Bob. This is what we're doing. You can run a podcast while I can. Go ahead. You got it.
Nah, we ain't gonna do that to you. I ain't gonna do that to you. So Jamaal Barber, born in Richmond, grew up in North Carolina. Now I've been living in Atlanta for the last 20 some years. So it's, a Southern boy, like doing my thing. And, I kind of take all that and then experience that the whole rural South kind of experience to the, big city, quote unquote, in Atlanta, and kind of to put all that experience into my artwork, man. So my art is all about me. Like I tell all my students all the time, like your artwork, whatever you do is the tool. But the artwork is really about you. So like, yeah, I do woodcuts and printmaking and, mixed media paintings, a little bit of sculpture, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But, it's mostly about me telling my story and honoring the people that I grew up with that made me who I am. And in some part, giving that message of blackness, continuing that cycle and relaying the history the way we always do, so that's how I see myself.
So you didn't take that long, man. You got it. What are you doing, man? It's like you said it before. So I got like two little follow-ups in that vein. And one goes a little something like this. So to talk a bit about, that your upbringing and how, some of that plays, like if there's a specific example of something that comes to mind and you're like, that absolutely shows up, that absolutely informs my work. And I'll give this as an example because I think this is how I communicate, I suppose, where when someone is just like, man, why do you ask questions like this? Or where do these questions come from? It's like, I'm a curious dude. I'm sure I was terrible as a kid, always with the whys, always with how does this get made? But having an interest in a lot of different things. So in the curation process and the conversation, I make these connections that a guest may not see, and then suddenly that's the connection they have in their head just because of the way that I think. And that's been how it's been for me since I was a kid, of like, oh yeah, this comic is connected to this thing, and this is why. So for you, as it relates to your work and the themes within it, are there are any examples that come to mind? You're like, no, this absolutely, definitely worked on this, and this is connected to something from my youth.
I think a lot of it is more the general experience of growing up in like the South, in the rural South, like Littleton, North Carolina, like not a lot of people, not a lot of stuff going on. But then the more you start to understand the world, the more you do research. I read autobiography of Malcolm X. I read like, a lot of stuff along that line, discovering the artists that I know and love, like Romare Bearden, and then applying that context to my life and realize like all the stuff that I used to do, where we live at, how we segregated, went to a mostly black school, and there was a companion mostly white school to go along with it. All of that stuff has an explanation. It has a reason. Yeah. And part of that is, I always say that we as people are just kind of rocks thrown into a river. Like when you're born, the world is already moving. Everything is already taking shape. So when I go somewhere, it's not that, this school was a 95% black school and it had a companion 95% white school to go along with it in the same county. Sure. That's not a coincidence. Like that happened to me. Like, and part of like understanding that life and understanding like all the things that came before us make us who we are and sort of determine what our choices are. You can break free. It's not fate, right? That's not what I'm saying. You're not locked into this circumstance, but you are born into a circumstance and then you have to wrestle with it. And so part of that and just realizing how much stuff that I thought was normal was not normal. Mm. You know what I'm saying? Like when you go off to college and you get a roommate, and then a roommate be like, yo, at my prom, they gave away cars.
Wait, what?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. So it's like, yo, they would never give away a car at my prom. They were giving away
Hot Wheels going out.
Yeah. So when you hear these stories, like, no, these people had a completely different existence than I did. Yeah. Like my, 18, 19 years at the time is nothing like theirs. Why? And so that sort of question about how did we get here? How did I get into this place? How did my grandmother end up where she ended up? Like, yeah. How do these people control so much of this county? Like all those questions kind of started my exploration into it. And so if you're going to make something about it, like I try to, and it never works, to make things that I think other people would like. And that never works. And so eventually I always come back to myself and like, yo, what does Jamaal want to say when I sit down at this table? And then that's where the art comes from.
So in that, it's a good segue. It's as if you've got the questions and you've done a podcast on your own before, but how did you become interested in art, and what was that sort of first foray into a creative pursuit? As I touched on before we got started, mine was illustration, comics, trying to do that. And now I'm at this stage, and this goes into the personality, in this stage where I'm in some ways fighting for legitimacy of this is a creative medium. This is an artistic medium versus just, as you were saying before we got started, something I should be doing podcasts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So trying to really make that distinguishment there. So what was your first foray into something like creative, or that early moment when you're like, I'm going to be an artist. I'm going to do something artistic?
I think it was less, I'm going to be an artist. Just simply because like the way I grew up, that was never really an option for you to do. Like, this Littleton, North Carolina, man. If I'm finna move somewhere, go buy me some land, get me a little job, I'm gonna chill and have cookouts on the weekend. I'm gonna make me a porch. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna put a shed in the backyard, like that's what I'm thinking, like growing up, because that's what people around me do. That's what we do. Yeah. Right. That we in the community, everybody that I know, like you try to get you some land, you get you a double wide, put it on that thing, and then you live your life like that. So one, it was never an option for me to be an artist, but I knew I liked art when I saw my dad had made my mom a birthday card one day, and I don't know, but something about it, I looked at it and it was like, yo, you made this.
Mm-hmm.
And like something about it was kind of like, wow, like you like this stuff, somebody makes the things that we like. And
Yeah.
so even though like I started to look at kids' books, and then I started noticing who the artists were and the books that I like. And like so it kind of picked up from there, just the idea of like, no, there was nothing. And then you made something.
Mm-hmm.
And that feeling is what I always chase. Like that's the high. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Like when people, being talk about heroin, that first high you get, it's like
Yeah.
the first high is always the best because like I made this thing.
Yeah.
Nobody can take it from me, despite like how chaotic my upbringing is, how whatever's going on in my life, how much money we have or don't have. I created this thing and you can't take that from me. Like, so when I get a sketchbook, it belongs to me. It's mine. Like I get to make and shape this world. And something about that has power. And I'm attracted to the idea of that. And then I connected it somehow along the way, just reading who I like to read and seeing what I like to like.
Yeah.
And I related that idea of power to my creations and the release of it. And so I don't know exactly when that happened, but somewhere along the way, it became a thing where it's like, yeah, I used to do comic books. I wanted to make comic books. It won't just, I read them. I wanted to draw comic books. You know what I'm saying? It's like, then I was like, started reading, like, no, I want to be a writer. I want to illustrate the thing. Like, all of it is, I want to get down to the origin. I want to be the one responsible for you to now have that experience of picking up this thing and reading it or looking at it and gazing. Like, I gave you that feeling. That feeling came from me. So part of it is like that connection to, I don't know, that original kind of sin of making stuff, man.
No. I hear you because it's this thing where it's like I want to put this out there, and you're out here chasing a dragon. I mean, you said it was like that high there, but it's one of those things where like I still have my art bag from when I was growing up. My color pencils in there, they're all brittle, they're all destroyed. Some of my original drawings, the comic books, the source materials, the art books from 1990, and that's always going to be a part of me creatively. And maybe I go back into it or explore it sort of in a different way. But I always look at that fondly as this was the first time, to your point, of I want to put something out there. I want to dive into and find out like, all right, who's the person that did this? Who's the person that drew this? Who's the person that wrote this? And how can I do what they're doing? Because I'm getting so much joy and so much out of it. And it's something about it. And even putting these out there, like, I still get giddy at times of like, man, I can't wait for somebody to hear this episode, man. I'm gonna kill them on this one.
Yeah.
or even the nerves of even going into a conversation. As I said before we got started, this is a lot like creative blind dates. You don't know if the person is super shy. You don't know if the person kind of hates you and still wants to do the interview for whatever reason. I don't know why, but that happens. Or you don't know if it's just like it just doesn't click. And and then the other time is when you find out that, oh, wow, no, this person is really cool. I didn't get a lot from the bio from this person that, gave me sort of this inclination. But upon talking, it's just like, I don't even have to look at my questions. We're just free jazzing. We're improvising here.
Yeah.
And it's something about that. So I want to move into this question because you touched on it, and I definitely want to dive in it a little bit deeper. So you said Romare Bearden, right? So
Yep.
Talk a bit about some of your influences, include Romare in there, but sort of how you first became aware of them, because that's a thing. Like when I look at this podcasting, I can always look back at maybe talk radio, but as far as podcasting as a thing, I can easily point back. It's not that long ago, but point back to 2007, 2008, listening to Kevin Smith on Smodcast talk about using it as a tool to keep his friendships together. It's always connected in that way. We're getting older. We don't hang out as much. Hey man, let's just have this scheduled time to just kind of like shoot the S and talk about movies and stuff like that. That's the entry point for me. That's how I became aware of this sort of genre and someone that's in some ways guided me through this medium. So for you,
I think it starts for me with Romare Bearden because, like I said, I always connected power to creation.
Mm,
And so I always was looking for what to create that had meaning, right? Like in a lot of ways, during the discovery of me and my relationship to blackness and like understanding the world through that lens, I
mm,
wanted my art to reflect that, and I know I didn't see it in like Spider-Man. I was a big Spider-Man guy, but Mark Bagley, who drew Spider-Man, like the on my run, Amazing Spider-Man, he wasn't black. He's not telling a black experience. So I know part of that was always me. I knew I wanted that thing. And so
mm,
when I found the book of Romare Bearden at the library, I think it opened my eyes to be like, this is what blackness looks like, right? Like the collage, the texture, the movement, the kind of embellishment of faces and stuff like that. Like all of this thing, this texture is what blackness looks like and feels like. And he was the first artist that I looked at his art and I felt a deep connection with it. Not just I like it, like you like a lot of stuff. Like my grandma had my man Kevin Williams Whack. He's a big time artist, sells all these prints. I've seen his print in my grandma's bathroom, the Walk with God one, and like, yo, it's nice. Like it means something to her. Like I like it, but I didn't connect with it in that way. But seeing Romare Bearden, I knew like this is it. This means something to me.
yeah.
And so that is kind of the beginning of that's the feeling that I want people to have when I look at me, right? That's what if I'm gonna spend so much time making this thing, I want to give somebody that feeling because to me that is the expression of humanity,
Yeah.
right? He's explaining something more about life, about his life, about the people he knew, about the Harlem, the neighborhood, the Mecklenburg County, like all the things that he described in his artwork. He put it in there. You can feel it and you can see it. I don't know Romare,
Yeah.
never got a chance to meet him. Like he passed away a long time ago.
Yeah.
But through his artwork, he gave me a world and an understanding of who he was. And I think that's what I connect with like the most. And so ultimately that's what I'm chasing, right?
Yeah.
And I'm always looking for people that give me that feeling. Like I love art, period.
Yeah.
But it's certain things that like stand out and mean something to you. And so that's what I'm always working for.
When you mentioned Mecklenburg County, I started smiling. That's where my family's from originally. My
Oh
grandmother. And
yeah.
I'm so like, ew, we out here. So, and thank you for that. That's and actually, you've done me a solid. You've actually answered one of my later questions. So shout out to you. Helping a brother out here.
I just be talking, man. I give away all the whole format.
um, so tell me a story about sort of like a challenging piece of work that you worked on, like what you were exploring, sort of the scope of the work. Why was it challenging? Or maybe you're just one of those people that's never had anything that was challenging. Like it was all easy, it was smooth, no issues with the work drying, no issues with it keeping its shape. Everything was smooth.
Oh no, it's always problems. This is printmaking. I just taught a class out at Penland. Shout out to Penland School of Craft, yo. It's a great place if you ever get a chance to go out there. But I was telling my students like, yeah, half of printmaking is solving problems, and then the other half is solving the problems. Because you have more problems. First, you solve problems to start the print, but then you have to solve the problem of finishing the print. And so it's the whole thing is like a big complicated mess. And it's always like no matter how many prints I've done, it feels like it's easy to some people, but I still have the same creative cycle. And for me, that's how I know I'm making good work. Is
Yeah.
that I know I can feel it like in my body. I start to know like what it feels like when I like something, when I'm being a little hesitant on it, when I start doing other things, when I'm getting anxious, then I get euphoric. And then I think I can conquer the world.
Yeah.
Then I think I'm the worst artist in the universe. And then it's like, oh, I just need to finish this. And
It's the
then
cycle.
somewhere along the line, I'm finishing, I can pick myself back up. I literally have that cycle every single time I do anything. And so every print is hard. And it looks effortless when people see me do it. I carve fast. I print like I know what I'm doing. But like every time it's like, yo, I don't know if this is gonna work. Like, and I like that feeling though, because that to me, that's part of like it activates a part of your brain. You know what I'm saying? Like there's certain things that you do. Like, yeah, I watch, just watching reality TV don't mean nothing. Like, you don't even have to really think. But don't nothing activate my brain like trying to figure out how to bring this thing to life. Like I feel like I'm wrestling with it, like a back and forth. Like it's trying to become something else, and I'm trying to make it do this thing, and then we kind of negotiate a little balance. I had this one piece I did called "A Place for Me." It was after Romare Bearden, actually. I reimagined one of his prints like as a farmer, and so I carved this big face, and I started. This is when I first started doing mixed media work, and I did this big panel, 6 foot by 4 foot panel. I had it laying in the floor because it wouldn't fit nowhere else. And I was just messing with it, going back and forth, like, I don't know about this. I changed the colors, like, oh, maybe it need to be brighter. I don't know about this. Like the whole time I'm putting it together, I'm going in. It's like, oh man, this might be a bomb. Like, I don't know what I was thinking when I made this one. But then somewhere along the line, it's like you can see it, and I can see it's a moment where the person, I do a lot of figures. It's a moment where the person feels alive, like they weren't alive. And then I don't know what I did, but now I feel like I'm with somebody in the room. Like it's not just me, making art. Like I'm actually having a conversation. I'm like studying people's faces. You know what I'm saying? Like when you're making something, especially when you carve it, and every single mark has to be made or not made. Everything has to be considered. And so when I'm making a face, especially like I'm thinking about the roundness of their cheek and how their nose protrudes. Like if it doesn't feel like this, does it look like they can breathe? Like it's that type of thing. So I'm always having that conversation, and I always feel like I'm making things that are beyond me, like beyond my capabilities. And I like that because I got to figure it out. Like I got to be good enough to make this thing, to represent this person, to share this message. I got to be good enough to do it. So I'm always pushing to be good enough in my mind. And I've never reached a level where it feels like it's easy, or it feels like it just happened. Like, nah, it never just happens. Like it's always a fight, even to this day.
Yes, it's pushing boundaries. It's sort of not really being satisfied, and I relate to it. And it's a question I definitely want to include in this sort of portion we're talking about here, where, I'm not just only interviewing these types of artists or these types of guests. I'm trying to like diversify it to stretch sort of my boundaries and what they might look like, and try to do it with I do the workout thing, right? And they talk about progressive overloading and things of that nature, how to keep it interesting. I call it F around, find out. That's what I call it. And it's a version of that. And here, it's not like, just trying to do the same interview. And sometimes you might recycle questions. You might be interested. I wonder what this person has to say with regard to this question. But trying to make everything unique, and it's a challenge. It's hard. Will it be received and things of that nature? Will they kind of get where I'm coming from? But making it a challenge because it matters, because it shouldn't just be, I just got to make this output, keeping it moving. Can't do it that way. You have to make it as the intent is creative. So could you speak on sort of exploring and experimenting with new techniques, new practices, new ways of doing things that may feel familiar? And when do you kind of include and accept sort of maybe a new practice or new technique within your flow? Or when do you know, like, I'm going to abandon this? I don't think this works. I think this is out.
I think it's a matter of having enough stuff going on that I don't think about it too much. Because I think part of it is like, you can get in your own head and you can psych yourself out of making something really great if you think about it too much. Like, when I get a piece of wood in front of me, like it's more or less like, can I even do this thing? Like, I know I did it that time. Like I did it that time, but that might have been a fluke. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know if I'm really equipped to do this. I might actually not know what I'm doing.
I might be
and got lucky. Yeah. And so I don't know. It's a little bit of imposter syndrome. It's a deep insecurity. I know for sure. I recognize that about myself. Like it's a thing that keeps calling me to make something that justifies all the time and effort I put into it and the money. And like somehow this thing has to be special, but nothing is ever really special enough, except it's things that other people make are special, right? But because I know and I'm so attached to the journey of making it, I know how, somewhere along the way, out of the 100 decisions I made to get it to be this piece, probably one of them was wrong, right? I should have done something else. And that's just me not being good enough to recognize it is the reason why this piece looks like that. Even though it's a great piece, it could be fine. Like people can like it, but I'm so attached to the making, the process, to figuring it out that it's hard for me to look at my work and see the finished thing, right? I remember making the mark, and when my tool slipped and I made a little etch, I ain't gonna tell other people, right? I ain't gonna tell you it's messed up.
Because you're like Jamaal, I noticed that thing right there. Where
what thing? I meant to do it. That's how I mastered that part of it. I meant to do it. Everything you see no exactly. Yeah. No.
Meanwhile, you're like, ooh, I noticed. Like, no.
Oh, I shouldn't have done that color. I think of that all the time. But I think that's part of it too. And like part of it is like, how much is just me being deeply insecure and unsure about what I'm doing. I mean, I said it before. Like I'm from Littleton, North Carolina, man. You supposed to get you some land and get you a double wide. Yeah. Like I'm out here making art, like for money. Like, come on, man. I don't know. That's that. Nobody's supposed to live like this. That's what I'm sitting there. I always tell myself, and I have to fight against it, like because my natural tendency, like if you let me, I'll just be in the studio all day. I know that. I enjoy it. It's work. I'm very dedicated and focused. I'm focused on the output. But there's a sense that why am I here making this stuff? And there's so many people that are not, like so many people that have harder circumstances that don't get to do that work much harder than I do. Yeah. And I don't know, it's being connected to that community at all times. And so part of it is like working myself out of that and really allowing myself there's freedom and space to, like, Jamaal, you were put here to make this thing. And so you have to make it. And another part of me is saying, like, are you really put here to make this thing? Like, is this good enough? Is this the highest potential you can go? So I'm always pushing to, I've got to make something amazing if I've been given this time and opportunity, this life, this breath in my body to make these things. Like, I don't know. I want to give back to it.
I encounter the same thing. We're speaking very similar languages where, like I said, I've been doing this a long time, doing the reps and all of that stuff, but then feeling like, this one didn't hit. You could ask some better questions. You could have did this. You did that during the interview or whatever, just really blowing out of proportion anything that just, at the end of the day, it's a conversation. It's not the perfect thing, and conversations have imperfections. And one of the things that I do just to kind of keep myself sort of settled and grounded is when I'm uncomfortable with something, when I'm not quite sure of something, I just go back to what I know. I know what makes me laugh. And I get a little attention here and there for stuff that I do, and people will gas it up, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And I don't hear the negatives. The negatives come from me. The negatives don't come from anyone else. They come from me.
Right. Yeah.
And what I do is just like, yeah, and I'm an H-list celebrity. I just take myself further down the alphabet. When someone's like, hey, man, that's Rob. I was like, noted H-list celebrity here. How are you? And, it keeps it sort of normalized. But yeah, I'm aware of the work that I put in. I'm aware of the output. I'm aware of the stakes, even in doing this, like, if I just got on here with no context of who you were and just like, I want to do the interview, but didn't prepare or anything like that, I'm wasting your time. I'm wasting the listener's time if this goes out and it's just kind of janky. And, that's important to me, putting out something that is someone's going to get something from. Someone's going to feel like, oh, okay, cool. Someone asked me about my work. That's great. Because a lot of times, the people that I'm interested in talking to, people haven't talked to them about their work.
Yeah.
And so I feel like a level of responsibility there. Or even, last week, the last interview that I did with a person that I really admire, and he's in his like late 70s. He does this sort of media thing. He's a television producer, music, but all of this stuff. He's got a long history. And he was like, man, I'm feeling really fortunate that you had me come on your podcast. And I'm like, wow, I'm a nobody. You're doing this. Like when you mentioned Yeah, man. When I was kicking it with Jimi Hendrix back in the day, I was like, how Sway, and he was like, he feels really fortunate that one, like, someone my age and background and all of this stuff will be interested in the work that he's doing or has done and really into that work. So just seeing that conversation, it has some meat there. That conversation has value there, and it shouldn't be taken lightly.
Absolutely not. And I think it's important because when I do studio noise,
Yeah.
it is I don't it's not that you haven't heard these people before, because some of them you have, some of them you haven't. I try to like go through the spectrum of like picking people that you might know, but this person you need to know because they're like on the come up. Like I'm catching them early, or I'm catching them and you just probably have never heard of them, but they do great work, that type of thing. But you probably never had them have conversations that way with a Black person talking about Blackness and how it reflects in their work and being, no, I know a lot about art, so I'm connecting to you on that. But it's not the high level, it's not high level, the highbrow
Mhm.
academic way of discussing it. Like this is how Black people talk. When I go to people's studio, this is what we sound like when we talking to each other. We make jokes on each other. We talk about people work. We're very serious about the thing that we're doing, but we know where we are and who we are, and we're enjoying it. And so that personal connection is super important.
It's less rarefied, it's accessible, and I want to step back just for the listeners who might not be aware. What is studio noise?
Oh, the noise. Oh
Out
man.
here across the streams. I want to give you that shameless plug piece right there a little early.
Oh no, it's all good, man. This is Studio Noise, man. It's a Black art podcast. So yeah, I was going to people's studios and having conversations just like this, just pulling up and learning so much game and getting so much knowledge that I just wanted to start to capture it. So that's what I end up doing. I've been doing it for a while, and I love talking to people that have really made it because they always look back and give like really good game. But I also love talking to people that are ascending, that are just making good work, they're dedicated to the art, and like maybe they're about to pop, um and you get to talk to them, and I call it a family, man, because I keep in touch with all these people and I'm following their career. I become invested in them, like I'm here with you. Like I interviewed Latoya Hobbs before she did like the big pieces. Like when I interviewed her, we kind of talked about, no, I've been working on this big project and I think it's going to be good. And then it comes out and it's like, oh, this is what you were talking about. Like this, the that Harvard bought all your pieces, like this that was just in the Frisk Museum, this that had the solo show in the Baltimore Museum of Art. Like this is what you were talking about. But now we could talk through her to that next process of, now that I've made this thing, people want me. Now, what do I have to do to keep up with it? Now, how do I keep up with demand? How do I still promote myself? And so the conversation expands and you get to come in at different entry points
Yeah.
and see it, right? And so I interview people that just graduated from college,
Yeah.
haven't had a solo show, haven't started a thing. One of them, Catherine Weiss, she ended up going to Yale for painting. So I talked to her, but while she was thinking about grad school, I talked to her when she entered Yale, and now I'll hopefully get to talk to her again now that she's graduating to get the whole spectrum. I think you need to follow this and know that this thing is possible. Like it's so many ways for you to be an artist, because it's not like you're a computer programmer and it's a certain type of job. Everybody know from whether you're in California or New York. Your computer programmers do this thing. You can kind of study it, you can do it, you can get a sense of it. But as an artist, every artist is individual. Every artist is making it with a different pie, right? Because it's like your art practice is a big pie and it has a bunch of different pieces in it. Some people teach, some people do solo shows, some people do installations, public art, some people do murals, some people do mentoring, some people, you know what I'm saying? Like it's so many different ways, and how they put their art career together is just as important because that speaks to who they are as a person.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And it speaks to what they produce as well. So now you get all these insights on this, these people are real people, and that's the part that people need to understand. Like there's a certain personhood that's involved with you being an artist. And a lot of decisions that you make, whether you like it or not, come from who you are. whether or not you pick this color or that color, whether you go big or you go small, whether you make a series of 100 pieces or one big thing. Like it's all these things really come back to who you are as an individual, and you got to try to understand that. And I think that if you just give people space and you give them the understanding and you want to know, right? Because most artists, they're making this thing, they want to share it. They want to share it. They want to talk about it and let everybody know how they spent their life doing this thing.
Yeah, people get to the spot where you really want to talk about what you do, how you do it, and again, as you're describing it, we're definitely crossing streams here. It's just the same sort of. It's just like I'm the Northeast version of it down there, and, just the difference is, and I'm talking to podcasters as well, and podcast artists and so on. But yeah, I think we have folks on, and I love that piece about the sort of trajectory, the arc, and one of the things that I'm considering doing is a season where I just run it back and really intentionally catch up with folks that I've had on. And it's just like the whole season is just re-interviews. Where are we at now? After doing X amount of episodes, X amount of years doing it, where are folks at now following that career? And
that's fun. It's so much fun because when you're talking to people, I mean, you're talking to people for like an hour. Like after I talked to you for an hour, like, shoot, we friends. I don't know much about you.
And that's the thing. Like when I talk to folks, and some people don't get it, and I think it's an identifying metric, right? Where, I go to some of these art shows, I get invited to different things. And I was like, I'm very mindful of where I put the time and energy. But at the root of it, what I'm aiming for is like, yeah, we're friends. We've been talking, man. I know what kind of food you like. I know what you're into, and and then kind of being able to sort through it, especially being here. Most of my interviews are in Baltimore with Baltimore-based folks, and that's the sort of mission statement, if you will, as to what I'm doing and what I will continue to do. And so I'm encountering and seeing these people all the time, and sometimes it's not as friendly as you would hope, but a lot of times it is pretty friendly. And you want everybody to do well. You want to see people, and it's like, hey, we've connected. And this is sort of the last piece I'll say before going to this next question. I look at this as this is sort of my creative outlet, and I brought someone on to collaborate on my creative outlet. And sometimes that's understood, and that's people get that. And other times it's almost like it's like a painter. You have someone that's like, you're sitting for me. It's almost a version of that. And sometimes people get it, sometimes they don't. And but I try to maintain that's what I'm doing. I'm coming with sort of this energy and this effort. If I just came in like the Migos in that Joe Budden interview when academic, you get the reference. That's all that really matters. And, it's that. But yeah, coming from a good place of, I'm here for friendship. That's a lot of times what it is.
I think you're there for curiosity. You said it. You said it before. That word, that curiosity. Like the most important part is like, I want to know who you are. Like, I want to know like what makes you, what made you pick that color? Like ultimately when I'm looking at people artwork, that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, yo, I'm so impressed with like there's so many decisions that people make. Like, why did you pick that shape? Why did you pick that color? Why did you pick this reference? How did you connect these two things like on the thing? So like, I want to understand it because selfishly, I want to also be able to make that decision too, right? Especially when I see something that's really good, I want to know like, yo, you left this amount of white space. Why would you leave that amount of white space? And then maybe I can try to do it or something. I don't know. It's like it's part of that. It's like I'm so engaged in the process that the other people processes are fascinating too. You know what I'm saying? And like so, then that's like I said, that's who you are. And so I got to know who you are in order to understand it.
So I got well, actually it's really just one last real question, because I think I have two listed, but they cover the same territory. So taking into account sort of your background as being an artist, as being a person that's a journalist in the art space, right? Because that's really what it is. You're having conversation. Let's call it what it is, journalism. And you're pursuing art, you're covering it, and you're teaching it. Talk about how those areas sort of intersect for you, and sort of any advice that you could share to those emerging artists of like, yo, I'm a person that's doing it. I talk to people who are doing it of all different, degrees in their sort of journey. Talk a bit about that, like what you kind of take out of sort of the lifestyle that you're in, and sort of like what would you share to some of these more emerging artists that you've learned over the years?
I think I think I look at it as one big art practice. Like it's not like I do all these little bits and pieces. Like I have one big art practice, and this is how I divide it up through teaching, through talking to other people, through making art, through printing for other people. Like it's a whole thing, and all of you need to do all of it to make it work. I don't know or haven't interviewed anybody that don't have the same balls in the air. Like, it's just juggling. Like your balls might be different colors, but you're still juggling. Everybody's like juggling, trying to make it work. And part of it is like the love and dedication that you have to the process has to be fundamental. It has to be priority number one, because it doesn't work no other way. Like it don't work if you I want to make art, but I also want to go hang out with my friends all the time. Like, nah, that don't work. Like you gotta build your whole life around your practice, and then along the line you'll be able to make things, but you can't judge it in the moment either. So I make a lot of stuff, and I don't know, 75% of it to me is not great, but how many years do I have to make something in order to make it worth it, like at the end? So especially like young artists, when I'm teaching, I always tell people like I'm going to show you some stuff, but you're going to have to discover it for yourself still. Even though I'm guiding you and showing you, giving you this advice, talking to you, can talk to whoever you want to. It doesn't beat the experience of doing it, and nothing can replace it. And so the one thing when I do talk to people, I always ask them like, all right, if I told you that you had to work constantly at this pace, like especially when it's like finals time, in college, I taught at Georgia State. Final time, it's like, oh man, I've never worked this hard in my life. But it's like, imagine you work this hard every single day. If I told you it'll still be 5 years before you make anything that people like, would you still do it? And like that to me is the fundamental question that everybody has to ask themselves in terms of like what you think you're going to get from it is not going to be what you think it is. Right. Like it's not going to be money, right? Because I know a lot of artists, they're not all rich. Right. Like who I could count on one hand the number of like rich artists that I've known and have interviewed. Everybody's not big time. Like, you got like, I don't know, it's 10 or 15 names for people that you automatically know. Michaeline Thomas, Deborah Roberts, like people like that you automatically know. And there are thousands of other artists that are out there working every day that are just as good as they are, but are not where they are. And so those people have to still make work in order to get the chance to do it. And would you still do it if you weren't getting accolades, if nobody's acknowledged you, if you don't sell anything? Because that after 5 years, the 6th year, you're going to be really successful. Mm-hmm. Are you going to make it through? Do you have enough dedication to the thing that you're doing? Do you have enough love for it to sacrifice everything for the 5 years of nothing? Yeah, I got to emphasize that when I tell it to people too. I became a printmaker, got all my stuff, got laid off my job, didn't sell anything for 2 years. Mm-hmm. 2 years of constantly making prints, being at home, keeping my son, not getting a job, just being strictly dedicated, made a bunch of prints, a lot of prints over that 2 years. Then nobody wanted them, but I kept making the art. And so having that dedication to the thing is what to me is more important than anything, because the person that's willing to give their life over to a process that has no guaranteed results. And this is what happens a lot of times. I'm blanking on the name, but there was an artist in Virginia. He made art his whole life. He got a museum show when he passed away. Mm-hmm. So he had made art his whole life, never left the county in Virginia he was at, was still in the same area, always making his stuff. And he did it for himself. It was beautiful stuff, wonderful stuff. But there's so many people making art. Everybody can't get attention. It's not possible for how much art, how many people are making art out in the world. It's not possible. But do you still do it? And like those are the people that really make it big. Those are the people that are gonna make something eventually that can get people attention. Now, are you happy with the eventually? And so part of that is like a test of dedication for people because a lot of people can draw.
Mm-hmm.
And none of that matters in terms of being successful. When successful people, whether they know how to draw or not, is not number one on the list.
Yeah, that's a good point, and it's a good spot for us to close on, because I when I'm teaching podcasting or working with other podcasts and helping them launch their thing, I'll ask them, I was like, do you have the stamina for it? Is this something that you want to do? And what's the number of episodes you see yourself doing in this, especially with the students and having to revisit stuff that I've done and just I'm kind of nose blind to. And I won't say a master to, but I'm kind of like, oh yeah, this is common for me. But I'm like, yo, you have this idea, you have this premise for a podcast. Is it a 50 episode? Is it a 10 episode thing? Are you going to get bored with it and really start to think through it, ideate on that? And is it something that you're like, I want to change things? Then you're losing your audience. Then you've kind of betrayed sort of that promise that you put out there.
Yeah.
And it's something to consider. It's not saying it's a right or wrong way to do it, but it's something to consider. And, but yeah, you're right. It's that hard work. And oftentimes it's not seen. And I think one of the things in doing sort of a version of hard work that at times isn't unseen or doesn't feel like it's seen, finding those moments to celebrate those wins a bit more. That's the thing that I find a lot of folks, how they say artists a lot of times don't pay themselves when they get those grants and they get that.
Yeah.
It's a version of that. It's just like, I got to keep working. I got to keep at it. I got more podcasts. Yes, I got 17 interviews to do this week.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the thing. So yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head as far as a lot of things to consider. And so thank you for that. And
for sure.
I want to move into my last few questions, my rapid fire questions. I've added 2 since we've been talking because, I've heard some things I wanted to dive a little bit deeper on.
Okay.
So don't overthink these. I always tell people that. It's like, don't overthink them. They're just questions.
Yeah, we freestyling. I got you.
Yeah. So here's the first one. What's your favorite color?
Black.
You get it. So when you're working, right? Like those times can, sometimes working, you mentioned sometimes you wouldn't even leave, you just work. You wouldn't even leave the studio. You wouldn't even, sort of take a break and things of that sort. What is that meal, that sort of that thing that you're like, this makes me feel better. Like after all of this work goes in, you may have missed a cut, you may have screwed something up. You're like, no one's going to notice this, right? And you need this for a reason. Is there a meal or something that, kind of gives you like, all right, I'm all right at this?
You know what? My thing is always when my wife sees me stressed out, she's like, "You want some Chipotle?" It's like, all right, yeah, I think I do want Chipotle. Actually, thank you. Like you. It's hey, I don't know. It's something about like just having a meal, man, and I don't know. It's good.
I hear you. Like for me, it's when something goes left and it's not going quite right. It used to be Chick-fil-A, and then I matured, and now it's just Indian food. It's like tikka masala.
Oh, yeah.
It's the whole setup and all the antioxidants in it. I'm like, yeah, back, baby. Feel like I'm reborn. So here's the last 2. And they're similar, but there's a bit nuance here. Who are your favorite people to discuss art with? And that's a good question because of what you do.
My favorite people to discuss art with. It's 2 different types of people. Types of people or people in particular, like
people in particular,
okay, yeah. So my man Charlie Palmer is a good friend and mentor of mine, and I can always pull up on him, and we always end up having like great art conversations because Charlie's a machine. You ever get a chance to interview Charlie? Charlie's amazing. He just did a stamp for the U.S. Post Office. He just does all this amazing work. He was working on a commission for DC Comics when the last time I went to a studio. So it's just a wide range of stuff that this guy do. But he is so insightful, and he's like at that age where, like, he's reflecting on his life and stuff like that. So we can always have a good art conversation with him anytime I get a chance. And I work out of a community printmaking studio, Atlanta printmaking studio down here. in Hateville. And I don't know, anybody that comes in there, and I know like if you willingly give up your free time to go to a printmaking studio, you are my type of person. And we are going to have some fun in here. We're going to listen to music. We're going to make art. We're going to get the process. You came here to print. I came here to print. So we are about to have some fun in here. That's so anybody that come to Atlanta Printmaker Studio and Charlie Palmer.
Okay, this is the last one. I'm very curious as to what folks are listening to. Like I got the food piece. I got the Chipotle off of you. So, what's the most recent song that you've played?
The most recent song that the most recent album that I played was Black Classical Music who is it by? Black. It's funny, I remember the name of the album, but I don't remember the name of the artist.
That's the thing.
It's Yusef Days.
Okay.
Black Classical Music is jazz, like a black like orchestra kind of jazz album. Like it has a lot of like African influence into it. It's a wonderful album. I remember playing it in the studio, and then one of my students that were at Penland came up and was like, "What are we listening to today? This is really good." I was like, "Yo, it is good. You're right." Black
great taste.
This was a phenomenal album. So yes, if y'all get a chance, just pop on Black Classical Music and play that thing. It's good stuff, man. Yusef Days.
Okay, I got you. I'm gonna add it to the list. So that's kind of it for the pod. For the real interview, you're off the hot seat, and in transitioning from the hot seat, I want to invite you to go to the shameless plug seat and tell the fine folks where they can check you out, work, website, all of that good stuff. The floor is yours.
Absolutely, man. Thank you. I appreciate you bringing me on, man. I like this crossover podcast and stuff, man. We need more of this support each other. We'll be out here, man. So it's your boy Jamaal Barber. You can check me out at J Barber Studio on all your social medias, at jbarberstudio.com website. The store, I always keep some nice, small, affordable prints on there for people looking to start collecting. People tell me my stuff getting too pricey. And I never want to lead the people, man. So you look on my website, you always find something nice that you can get into if you want to. And of course, you got to follow the podcast Studio Noise, Noize, Noise with a Z. Make sure you check it out. Black Art Podcast. Everywhere you listen to podcasts, we had it. So because it's just me on the podcast doing all the things. Yeah. Whenever I got something in my career that I need to do, or excuse me, something in my life that happens, like I have to like take a break. So I was intending to be at Penland with episodes, but Penland was so busy. It's such a great place. That's a whole nother podcast episode talking about Penland. But I didn't get a chance, but I got new interviews coming, starting up again, coming back at you all summer long.
And there you have it, folks. I want to again thank Jamaal Barber for coming on to the podcast and sharing a bit of his journey with us. And I'm Rob Lee, saying that there's art, culture, and community in and around your neck of the woods. You've just got to look for it.